Welcome back to the JAZZIZ Podcast, where we explore artists shaping the music today and the stories behind that music. I'm your host, Michael Fagan. Thanks for joining. Today, we're joined by two extraordinary musicians. One you probably know already. He's one of the most recorded bassists in music history. He's worked with everyone from Eric Clapton to Michael Jackson, Phil Collins, Daft Punk, Beyonce. And he's here with his son, also an accomplished musician, gifted pianist and composer in his own right, to talk about their new album, Father and Son. Welcome, Nathan, Noah. Great to have you both here.
Thanks, Michael. Good to be here.
Of course. Noah, let's start with you. You've grown up around some pretty incredible and famous musicians. What was that like? And maybe you can tell us a couple of moments where you go, wow, I can't believe he or she is here in my house.
Yeah, no, it's truly a blessing. We were just talking about how back in the day when he was recording an album with BB King and Eric Clapton, and we were what about 2-3 years old in the studio, and BB King got some dollar bills and he made it into rings and put it around our fingers, and come to find out they're $100 bills on our hands. So just stories like that, growing up around such amazing musicians, but amazing people that to me first felt just like extended parts of the family, and then kind of growing up and realizing how amazing of an impact they had on music, and it's truly a blessing to realize that.
Wow. So you paid your dues and you're still paying them. You went to Berkeley. I understand that mom and dad realized, like, you were very young and had perfect pitch. You said, we got to get this kid playing. What was that about? Do you remember those days? I mean, obviously you were really small, but tell me about that and what it was like in the house to kind of be around musical greatness.
It definitely had a huge impact on the way I approach music and my style. Of course, hearing different genres like blues, hearing Eric Clapton and hearing, you know, people like Herbie Hancock, and getting introduced to jazz and foreplay, and just a huge combination of influences and styles. And I think it's definitely shaped the way I play and the way I approach music. And of course, it's been a huge catalyst to why I want to pursue this as well.
That's great. So now, obviously, you know, your dad so well. You spent so much time together, but in the recording process, when you get into the studio, did you learn things about your dad you didn't know before?
Yes, I would say so, because this was really we've done shows and we've done a couple projects, studio projects, but this was the first full length project we've done together. And so it kind of made me realize, first of all, he's been in the studio doing these things for decades. So it kind of made me realize why a lot of people appreciate him and have been calling him over the years. Of course, just the energy he brings, and how easy it is to work and collaborate, and just the magic that is created. And it's nothing like it. So I'm glad to have learned that firsthand, being in the studio with him.
Yeah, were there some memories face to face where you were either composing or trying to figure out an arrangement where you say, hey dad, can we try this?
Oh, so many times. That's what it all was like, and it was never, oh no, son, we got to do. It was always, what do you want to do, and it was just a reciprocating feedback experience, and just listening and trying to serve the music, and I've been very grateful to have that experience.
Wow. And Nathan, so you have your son, obviously a younger generation. You've played with artists that have basically showcased music for younger people. Um, what did you see as Nathan brings that youth to a project that you have sort of that aha moment? You go, yeah, I normally don't do it like that, but that sounds like a good idea.
Well, I have to say, a lot of times, and when we're in the studio, especially quartet or two or whatever, it's just ideas going back and forth. And I really as I listened to this album, a lot of the moments were just those ideas where Noah said, "What if we did these chords at the end of yesterday?" And he played the percussion. And, come on, that's in. And a lot of the things that you're hearing were actually the run through. Like, let's try it. And Moogie Canazio, our engineer, he would just hit record. So like it was the zero take, not even the first take.
Mhm.
And then we'd run it down, and then we go, okay, let's do an official take. But we listened to that very first one before we even knew we were recording, and that ended up being the take. And it's a lot of fun that way.
Wow. Wow. No, that's really, and and when we look back at your history, you've worked with some of the greatest producers, Quincy Jones, David Foster. You bring that to a project, and your son is there getting that experience from you. What were some of the moments that you remember, especially with people like Quincy and David, that were music moment changing for you, where you learned so much from them that you bring them to all the projects that you do moving forward?
Right. Well, you just mentioned two of the probably two of the most gifted and wise and yeah, prolific producers. Um, Quincy, I was in the studio with him once. I think it was a Michael Jackson record, but he usually let the band, like he put these amazing bands together. You walk in the session and there's, Jeff Porcaro or John Robinson on drums. There's Phillinganes. There's David Pates. There's David Foster. It's like you can't go wrong with the section. But every now and then, and he would come in there and say, Nate, just before the second verse, can you just drop a little, grace note in there and then take it down the octave? And I'm thinking, genius. Why didn't I think of that? And I do that before the second verse now from from now on.
Yeah.
And it's just little nuggets like that, and those guys, like Babyface, and they just have vision. And if you pay attention, they leave a lot of clues, and
Mhm.
it really helps to make music. And then again, now that we're on the path together, he's doing the same thing. I see him just kind of observing and then taking notes and continuing down the path. It's fun.
That's great. So I don't want to embarrass you or make you gush, but when, Nate, did you realize that you were playing on some of the most iconic records that you said, I'm actually part of music history?
I don't really look at it like that, but as it's kind of like not knowing that you're right in there. I mean, when I was 16, I toured the country with Barry White, and then he called me to make some of those records with him, and we were in the studio, and you know, next thing you know, there's Gene Page and there's the Love and Unlimited Orchestra, and these records are huge, and then when you're in the studio with Quincy and it's for Michael Jackson, in the back of your head, you're thinking, man, a billion people are going to hear this. Like
Mhm.
whatever note I play, if I play it long, short, low, high, a billion people are going to hear it. So make it as good as it can be. And recently now it's just been fun to kind of look back and hear some of the records that have kind of gone viral, Get Lucky, and these things, where you just heard the record everywhere, and write some songs. Easy Lover we wrote in the studio with Phil Collins and Philip Bailey, and to this day I hear it on the radio, and it feels good, like, okay, we leaving a little mark there, but
Yeah.
let's keep going.
Oh, that's great. Well, let's jump into the new album, Father Son. You know, I loved it because it started out with one of my favorite songs by one of my favorite keyboardists, Lyle Mays. And was that your idea, Noah, or is that Dad's?
The combination. He was playing that kind of as an interlude on the road with Eric Clapton, and they had a beautiful arrangement, and it was kind of an opening to Cocaine, the song, and so it was this real ethereal kind of energy and vibe to it, and we kind of decided we wanted to put an arrangement of that and put that in front of one of our songs in our album, and of course, fittingly, Eric agreed to add guitar on that, so that was a huge blessing.
Yeah, it was a nice, you doing the vocals, Nate, and Eric doing the guitar. And it's such a beautiful song.
Oh,
As Lyle was just Lyle.
Beyond, yeah.
Yeah.
There's something even beyond the notes, the spirit of that, and you can't really put your finger on why it touches you. But I remember Eric sending me the song when he discovered it, Lyle Mays, and that let me know just the reach of somebody like Lyle to reach, so many people, regardless of genre, and so it's a song that I'm glad we're able to kind of still keep uh, out there in the world.
No, it's great. And so, you know, I remember a really actually probably my favorite Nathan East song that you did from Reverence 11/8, and
Um,
and they kind of had a Lyle kind of sound to it, almost a Matheny group type of vibe going on there. And are you guys Matheny Mays fans? Because we're hearing it again on this album.
Well, of course, and how can you not be? And that particular song was written by our dear brother Chuck Loeb, who has gone before us. But the first album, he wrote a song for me called 7/8 because our birthdays are December 7th and 8th. His the 7th and mine the 8th. So Chuck Loeb writes a song, 7/8,
Right.
and then so the second album came along and he said, here's another one. This is 11/8, and I still play it and I still get choked up when I play it because I
Yeah.
just think about Chuck and it has all of those elements of that music that we know and love so much, especially that Matheny Mays era of music where it's just luscious chords and progressions and everything just caresses you. It's just yummy, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we're
I
keeping that going.
no, you are. I actually when I saw 11/8, I wasn't thinking of music structure as much as I was because at that time, and it still is one of my favorite songs that you've done.
Thank you.
And I thought, well, it's kind of like Spinal Tap. It's not 10, it's an 11. You know.
Ah, fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
it's funny because leave it to Chuck to kind of like get the play on our birthdays and then make it a musical tempo, at the same
Yeah.
time.
Absolutely.
And
Chuck was amazing.
I
Jack
just
Lee.
came.
Yeah,
No, I was
I
just
was
gonna
going to
say I
ask you
came
about
across a
Jack.
poster
Yeah.
of Chuck Loeb and Foreplay playing at your club at the
Wow.
JAZZIZ club there, and I just discovered the poster the other day, and I thought, hey, I'm going to be talking to Michael, but yeah, just I can't shout out to Chuck enough, that how much of a musical influence he still continues to be on us.
Yeah, absolutely. And a brilliant musician and a brilliant, wonderful human being. I get sad when I think about Chuck. I wrote a piece when he passed, and I just what a loss.
Yeah, yeah, think about him every day.
Yeah. So I was just going to mention. So Jack Lee's a guitarist who I think a lot of people in the U.S. may not know him as much, but I know you've worked with Jack, and I know Bob James has worked with Jack, and he's featured on the song "Reminisce." Um, how did that come? How do you know? How did you know it was just through recording? Did you meet him not outside the U.S.? How do you know Jack?
Yeah, Jack is our Korean brother. We've known him. He brought Foreplay to Seoul, South Korea in 2001. And so we've been working together ever since. Jack and I did an album together called Heart and Soul that came out about a year, 2 years ago. And we're kind of part of each other's musical DNA, and we tour together. So when we did Heart and Soul, Noah played all the organ on that record, and then when we did my album, this song kind of had it had a perfect spot for Jack to play on, and he does a great job. And we sent it over there, and he sent that guitar part back, and it's we love what he did. He continues, and he's working on a tour for us now in Asia that we will go out and promote this music in a few months.
That's great. Yeah, my understanding, and the reason I wanted to ask you that is in Korea, he's a superstar in jazz. I mean, he's very well known there.
Yeah, I mean, we played a concert there and promoting the Heart and Soul album, and Noah came, and our drummer Donald Barrett and Mimi. So we had a quintet and he filled up a place the size of Disney Concert Hall. It's kind of like their
Yeah,
version of that in Seoul, and it was like, I'm going, Jack, and they love him over there, and he's a wonderful musician, and
yeah,
again, one of the highest standards.
yeah, yeah.
He and
So,
Pat are really close as well.
yeah, yeah. Well, we
Yeah.
I'm going to run through a couple other tracks. An artist that we haven't heard enough of over the years, and Hubert Laws. You brought
You
Hubert in to do Killer Joe, a classic. And
Classic.
yeah, I mean I remember back in the '70s and really like through the '70s, I was a major Hubert Laws fan. Bought every album that came out. I think he was on Columbia, and then we don't hear from him much these days.
Yeah, I think that relationship, well, the Columbia Records and the jazz department and all of that sort of went away. George Butler and they were very close. Um, Hubert played on the original Killer Joe 50 years ago with Quincy, and we thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool? And he came
Yeah.
right over. I played in his band when I first moved to LA.
Wow.
Me, Bobby Lyle, and Dugu, and we toured
Wow.
around the world together. So he's a dear friend, and yeah, I'd love to hear more of him. But he certainly came in and blessed this album with a
Yeah.
great performance.
Actually, wonderful. Uh, Until You Come Back to Me, classic. Love that song. Oh, when you hear it, you can't stop moving. And of course, you got Mary Clayton to do the vocals. Uh, how did that come about? I haven't heard of her in a while, and she was, a superstar.
Queen Mary Clayton,
Yeah.
and like one of my all-time favorite singers, and she's a dear friend of ours who actually she called me to do her Tiny Desk concert that she did
Mm.
during the pandemic when
Mhm.
we were all shut down. So I remember going over there and doing that, and we went over and played something for her, and she fell in love with Noah, and then this song came up and we said, would you honor us with a vocal? And she came right in and sang it like she wrote it, and does a great job. And Greg Phillinganes was on piano, and Noah was on the Hammond B3, and they were back to back, and we were kind of running the changes slowly, rubato, just to kind of go through the changes, and then we said, hey, that'd be a nice intro for the song, just have her sing, and she just sings so great on this. I love it. I love her.
Yeah, that's great. And then finally, the Seiko Matsuda, who I haven't heard of in a while, on
Right.
"How Deep Is Your Love." Great to have her back.
Great to
You
have her.
brought a
But
lot of people
she's
back.
well, it's nice. There's a lot of people that have a lot to say. Seiko sold over 150 million records in
Yeah.
Japan. And she asked me to produce her last one called Seiko Jazz 3 that we put out last year, and I called Noah, was the arranger on the album. We both went over and did a couple of gigs with her. So we recorded Until You Come Back to I mean and, we recorded How Deep Is Your Love, which is a fantastic song for her album, and we were sort of guests on her album. Then we recorded it, and she guested on our album, and
That's
it,
great.
it came out great. Yeah.
It did. It did. And so Noah, there's you know, as a listener, I'm a musician, but I'm the worst musician on earth. But as a listener, and I listen to a lot, there's usually one track on an album where the group, the collaborators, solo artist says, "Yeah, that's the track that it just worked out better than we thought." Which track is it on this album?
that's a good question because we really felt like that was every track that we cut, and a
Mhm.
lot of them were kind of in the studio. Were kind of just the run through, and then our engineer Moogie Canazio just happened to be recording it. So just the spirit of just always the spirit of that first take is the magic. And I think our duo song Utopia Noah was one of those
Mhm.
songs that came together nicely, I think. And even the arrangement of Yesterday, we were kind of just running through that, and it felt so good that we decided to use that as a take. But that's a great question because, man, it's a lot of them felt that way when we were doing it. So
Yeah, they're all our babies.
Yeah, and you know the thing that I love about this album, it's really quite symbolic of your career, Nate, and that is I came up with a phrase. I don't know if I remember it. It it's a jazz album, but it's not a jazz album. But there's it's jazz when it needs to be, and yet the elements of jazz permeate, and it
You
really
know,
it's a reflection of this incredibly, you know, diverse career that you've had, where it's got gospel and soul and jazz and more ambient, and it kind of does it all. But there's a link that makes all the tracks work on this one project that makes you want to listen from the opening Lyle Mays track to the jazziest track on the album, the closing track. Now I know people don't listen to albums like that anymore, but I still do.
me too. Me too. And you know, you remember, and actually too, we were happy that Quincy did get to hear this version of Killer Joe. We got it,
Oh, great.
we got it finished and sent it to him just while he's on his last few months. And but you know, speaking of Quincy, you know, he makes those albums the same where you can't really just put it into a box, but it has kind of everything that you can listen to it top to bottom. And we kind of approached it with that sense of the he used to call it the musical gumbo, you know, where you have ingredients in there.
Mhm.
And okay, now you know, time to put a little R&B, but it mix it with a little bit of jazz, you know, and some progressions, and then throw a little blues in there, you know. And I think they all work together as a hybrid sometimes, where there's a very thin line between these genres: blues, jazz, gospel, R&B, you know. And I think they all have the elements, and so I feel like we went for the capturing of those elements.
Yeah, I mean, you know, saxophonist Ed Kaye, Miami-based saxophonist, was with Miami Sound Machine, a wonderful player. And I remember he was once playing in our club, and he was doing really a straight R&B set, and there was a jazz crowd there that was there to hear him play jazz. And he got done with one song, and he said, "You're probably all wondering whether this is jazz or not. It's jazz because I'm playing it." You know, I was
Fantastic.
yeah.
Yeah. No,
Well,
you know, because that's what it is. And the thing I don't really like is trying to have to put a label or
mhm,
you know, stick a sticker on it, because that to me it puts you in a box, you know. So then they say, okay, you have to, it has to be this, it has to be smooth jazz, nothing else, or contemporary, or real, or you know, and then or R&B. Okay, go down there's the R&B department down the hall, you know, or you know. So and I've had the greatest time of my life playing in rock and roll bands,
mhm.
R&B, jazz, and pop. And so and I've never really had to distinguish in my head. I just, when I come to the music, I just come up with some good notes and see what you can contribute to this beautiful language that we get to be a part of.
Well, with that being said, with everything you've accomplished, Nathan, um, what legacy do you hope to leave, not just as a bassist, but as a musician and a contributor to the fabric of this wonderful music we love?
You know, that's a good question, and I often hear people ask that question, and I think to myself, that can only be answered by the people that are going to um, appreciate that legacy. And so I never put any thought into this is the legacy that I want to leave. But obviously, I'm excited about, you know, him continuing on, and you know, my own blood being able to go and make this his tree grow, you know.
Mhm.
But from a legacy standpoint, I try to, in the moment, just be the best human being that I can be, and all the traits that I grew up, that my parents taught me: the compassion, kindness, empathy, love, and I try to, you know, it sounds a little corny, but I just try to put that spirit into everything that I do. And if that leaves some kind of legacy that somebody can appreciate, I'd be happy.
That's beautiful. Well, Nathan, Noah, thank you so much for sharing your time and your music with us. It's not just a beautiful record, it's an example of creativity that's passed down to the next generation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
Man. Thank you so much.
You bet. For all you listeners, the album is available essentially on all streaming services. Check it out. Until next time, I'm Michael Fagan with JAZZIZ Podcast. Stay inspired and keep listening. Thank you for joining.